Today we're going to be mixing together Iroiro in the color Violet with Pastel Rose Gold, or Rose Gold Pastel. If you saw my Violet video, you'd probably see that for me. Anyways, the Violet turned out quite blue. So I wanted to try making it a little bit more purple, but also maybe doing a more smoky-ish purple is kind of the goal, because you could definitely add a pink to this to make it more purple as well. But I just wanted to try a different shade than I've done in a while. So you may notice that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12. I just want to say that that is not synonymous with hair levels. I actually do different pictures and video clips and stuff near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. 1 is green, just wanted to see how the green and the purple would kind of interact with each other. 2 is gray, 3 is a natural red, 4 is a soft black, and then 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. Also, I want to make a note too that though these are human hair, they are not virgin hair, so they've been chemically colored, bleached, or treated at some point in their existences. So with my mix videos, I like to do at least 2 different ratios. So on the top half, I'm going to do a ratio. I usually try to do a darker ratio on top, and then on the bottom half will be a lighter ratio, hopefully. So for the first ratio, we're going to do an 8:1 ratio. So that's going to be 1 part of the violet to 8 parts of the rose gold. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Plus, different screens and monitors and whatnot can make colors look a little different. So please just use my video as a reference for how it could possibly maybe turn out for you. For the second mixture, we're going to do a 12:1 ratio. So again, that will be 1 part of the violet, but this time 12 parts of the rose gold. So I think I'm going to let these sit for about 3 hours just so I can let the color fully absorb into the hair. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I will meet you back here. I would say that my goal of making this a little bit more purple and a little bit smoky was pretty successful. I was a little worried at first once I saw the top half because it's a little bit more cool tone than I thought it would be. But now that it's rinsed out and dried and whatnot, it still looks relatively purple on the top. So as long as that happens, I'm happy. And this does get me excited to do more Iroiro mixes, especially with violet, because I think mixing violet with a brighter pink could get a really cool result as well. But if you have any mix requests, feel free to let me know. So 1 was originally green. I don't know if I love how that turned out because you can't see a ton of purple coming through on the top or the bottom swatch. I think the top shows a little bit more, so the coolness in the purple shows through a little better. The bottom half is a little bit harder to see. Overall, it has kind of a grayish, dusty tone over the green. 2 was the gray, and usually the gray gives me one of the more cool tone swatches, which I would say is true, but the gray also kind of darkened and smoked the color up as well. So for 3, 6, 7, the top half definitely did dye better, which I think is because there was more violet. I believe violet is a lot more pigmented than the rose gold, so the more rose gold you add, the less pigmented this color will be. So there is a slight difference on the bottom, but it's not as drastic as the top. And even though it did take on the top, I think the purple is kind of hard to see. I do see it a little more on the number 3 swatch. Overall, it just kind of looks a little bit more cool toned, but still in a natural family. 3 was the soft black. I do not see a difference there. 5 was a darker brown, and there may be a slight difference. I think the top half is a little bit darker. Overall, it still looks like a dark brown, so I don't think I would recommend this mix for very dark hair. I think number 8 is where you get to see a little bit more purple coming through on both the top and the bottom. It starts to look a little less just straight ash, the way it kind of does on 6 and 7. And again, you see more purple. And then as the swatches get lighter, that becomes more and more true, essentially, a little bit more saturated. So I think partially because of the rose gold, I would shoot to have as light of hair as possible with this mix, unless you are going for something kind of like the top half of number 9. But I guess it does depend on how much violet you use. The more violet your mix is, the better it will do over darker hair. But overall, like purples and blues sometimes can struggle over darker hair. So especially if your hair is virgin, I would say do a strand test. And then number 12 was the toned swatch. Usually that one's kind of in between 11 and 2. I would say, again, that's true. It's darker than a number 11, kind of the same way that number 2 is darker, but I do see a little bit more warmth in the purple versus what I see in the number 2. But having the platinum blonde hair underneath does make this mix turn out a little bit brighter. So you may not have to tone your hair for this mix as long as it's light enough. But usually the more yellow in the hair, the little bit more warm toned it will look. So as for comparisons, I don't have anything perfect, but I did want to still show my most similar out of the ones I've done currently. So the first comparison I'm going to show is Manic Panic in the color Electric Amethyst. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. I feel like the Electric Amethyst is, in terms of undertone, kind of in between the top and the bottom swatch. It's definitely a little bit more cool tone than the bottom, but I see a little bit more warmth coming through than the top, so it is right in between. And my mix, again, my goal was to be a little bit more smoky, whereas the Electric Amethyst is definitely a lot brighter, and that brightness definitely carries through onto the slightly darker blonde. So if you have not the lightest hair, you might have a better chance with the Manic Panic. You can see just how saturated it looks compared to my mix, and I do think that is partially because of the slight desaturation of my mix. I would still say that Electric Amethyst is still a pretty cool toned purple overall. The other color I wanted to compare today is Lunar Tides in the color Iris Purple. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and number 9. So the color by itself is definitely a lot deeper, but when you dilute it, you can see it's not too far off. So the iris is also a pretty cool toned purple as well, but I would say based off of the undertones of this color, it's also a color I would recommend for very light hair. It has a very similar turnout on the slightly darker blonde swatches as it does to the mix. I think possibly if we were to darken this, it would turn out a little bit more similar to the top. So if you did like this color, but you wanted it a little darker, the Lunar Tides might be a good option. It just probably wouldn't be as smoky as my mix. But also, if you have hair that takes color really, really well, there is a chance that my mix might not even look that smoky on your hair. For example, I did smoky mauve on my swatches. Turned out very beautiful. I did it on my hair. It turned out pretty much the same as my swatches. Then I did it on my husband's hair, and it turned out like a magenta, which is another reason I would definitely recommend doing a strand test no matter what you're doing, just to be safe. So now I'd like to get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything you see past this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting.
day in a place for welcome to another day in the life of
I hope this video helps. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very, very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.